Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Tuesday. It is 4 p.m. ET, and you know that means it is time for Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. I am your host, Hank Phillippi Ryan, the USA Today bestselling author of 15 novels of suspense. My newest is What You Know. My newest, I know the name of it. I totally know the name of it. One wrong word is one wrong word, which is sort of scandal meets suits. And thanks to you, it just went into a second printing. So I am so delighted about that and so thrilled about that. And thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you to everyone who sent me a book face. You know, if you send me a book face like this, you get a prize. Isn't that amazing? I want to see yours, Abbott, someday. Because today we are having the absolute joy of chatting with the fabulous Abbott Kahler, who also has a book face on her cover, Where You End, which
So
is
rabbit face more.
it's a book face, rabbit cover face, rabbit face, which is so chilling and so weird and so unique and so unusual, just like this book, which is captivating and immersive and thought-provoking and absolutely propulsive. So I highly, highly, highly recommend this book and cannot wait to talk to Abbott about that. Hey, Susie Baldwin, welcome, welcome, welcome. And Sharon Bishop is here. Kathy Lanigan is here. Sherry Steuben is here. Kathy Lanigan says the cover is awesome. And yes, indeed, it is. This is interesting, Abbott, because this is your debut fiction.
Yes.
But you're known also as an award-winning nonfiction author, and you've changed your name. It's such a fascinating story. It's not the usual name change. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was a very I guess fittingly for this novel, it was a creepy name change, but it happened actually about 10 years ago. A writer wrote to me, more than 10, a writer wrote to me in like 2013 and a reader and said to me, do you know if you Google yourself, it says that you died in 2010. And this was really weird. No, I did not know that Google was reporting I had died. Sure enough, I Googled myself. My picture came up, my alma mater, and died 2010. So it was really pretty creepy and disconcerting and unsettling. And at the time, I had been trying to write a novel. I was tinkering around with something. And I thought in the back of my mind, if I did manage to publish that work, I was going to publish it under a different name because it was fiction. I was also turning 40 at the time. So I think there was a little bit of a midlife crisis factoring in, but whatever it was, I went to the courts. I formally changed my name to Abbott Kahler. So that was finalized in about 2013. And I just finally now I'm starting to use it professionally.
Well, what happened though? I mean, couldn't you call someone and say this is wrong? How did that evolve?
I don't know how it happened in the first place, but I did enlist anybody who I could get on Facebook or other social media, all my friends, and had them report to Google that it was, reports of my death were greatly exaggerated, and they did take it down, but I have no idea how it got up there in the first place.
Sometimes, I don't know if you do this, I'd love to know, but sometimes I auction off naming rights in my novels. And in some of my novels, there are the names of real people. And sometimes, hey, Anissa is here now. Anissa Joy Armstrong is here. Welcome, welcome. Susie Baldwin and Renee Herskowitz is here from Southwest Florida, and Kim Rutter. Thank you. Welcome you all. Sometimes I'll have real people's names. They've given money to charity in order to be in a book. And sometimes they want to be the victim. They want to be the murder victim. And I say to them, you think it's funny now, but when you see your name that you're dead, you won't think that's funny.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I guess it's a safe way, why are we so fascinated with true crime to begin with? It's just a safe way to sort of dabble in something dark while remaining safe, and a way to sort of investigate people's darkest urges and instincts and why there's evil in the world while maintaining a sort of distance from it. And I guess just having your name in there is a way to even personalize the experience a little bit more. But of course, if it does happen to you in real life or somebody, it's obviously not a good thing. And it's just a weird psychology. Why do people like dark stuff? Yeah.
I think it's interesting too, when you saw that you were listed as being deceased.
Yeah.
Was it, that must have been sort of a bizarre moment of sort of connecting reality.
Yeah, it was, especially like with a picture of yourself attached and personal information attached, my college and a picture of me that I have seen before on social media. It was from an event. And I have it just the fact that that happened at all was just really disconcerting because somebody had to report that,
Yeah. And
and then
somebody had to not check the facts very well.
yeah, and you just wonder, does somebody out there want me dead? Maybe this is a premise for another novel.
I was going to ask you about that. Actually, if it was a premise for another novel, we heard a funny noise a minute ago, and people are just thinking maybe it's somebody's computer, but it
Yes.
isn't. Can you tell us what that funny noise was? So next time we hear it, we can laugh.
That noise is actually my beloved African gray parrot. This is Dexter, who does make occasional appearances on social media with me. He really is. He's not a great talker, but he's an expert imitator. So he'll do the car backing up. He'll do a car alarm. He'll do the telephone. He will do sort of the trash truck backing up. And internet noises. If the mail is coming in, he will, email is coming in, he will do an email sound. So say hi, Dexter, everybody. He's going to beep occasionally during this chat. So if you hear a beeping sound, it's him.
And the only other beeping sound, I love that Dexter is here. Is he named after Dexter, or who is he named?
He is older than the TV show. He's 23 years old, and he's actually named after Pete Dexter, who's one of my favorite novelists.
Right,
very sort of Flannery O'Connor-ish novelist. He used to be a columnist in Philadelphia, where I'm from, and I just have always loved him. And Paris Trout is one of my favorite books of all time. So
and Anissa says, "Hi, Dexter. We love to see the pets."
Yeah.
We should also say that in the Never a Dull Moment crime time, Renee says he's gorgeous. And
he knows he's gorgeous too, Renee. He's fully aware. Yeah,
that's great. He's preemie.
Yeah.
We should also let people know, because Crime Time is live, that Abbott is expecting edits on her brand new nonfiction book, which may arrive any minute. And
Yes.
when they do, we're going to go let her answer the door and get the edit. So never a dull moment here on Crime Time. If you are new to Crime Time on a Mighty Blaze, let me tell you quickly, it was started 4 years almost ago. Well, 4 years ago, I think we just had our birthday, by Jenna Blum and Caroline Levitt, a mighty blaze to keep us all together and keep us reading and keep us writing and keep us meeting new novelists and new authors and learning about new books and sort of discovering the world of fiction and nonfiction and publishing and chat together. And we are still going strong after 4 years. So welcome, welcome, welcome to you all. Crime Time here on A Mighty Blaze. Let me tell you a little bit specifically about our author for today. Now you know about her edits and her parrot and her name, but let me tell you a little bit about her, about Abbott herself. Abbott Kahler is the author of 4 New York Times bestselling works of narrative nonfiction. We can talk about that later. Her books have featured as Indie Next Picks, Amazon's Best Books of the Year, Library Journal's Best Books of the Year, and more. She has also been a finalist for the Edgar Award for Best Fact Crime and many more fabulous awards. Today once named her a pioneer of sizzle history. So we'll have to ask her what sizzle history is. Sounds good. She has written for NewYorker.com, New York Magazine, The Wall Street Journal, The Washington Post, Smithsonian, and other publications, and has appeared on many major media outlets. I'm sure you've seen her. Her books have been optioned for television and film, and her podcast about George Remus, the Mad Bootleg King, is forthcoming from iHeartRadio. Abbott is a native of Philadelphia, as she said, where she spent 6 years as a journalist covering crime, advocating for abused women, and hanging out with mafia bosses and baseball wives. She lives in New York City and in Greenport, New York. Her novel is out right now. Let me show you that one more time. It's been out for a month, maybe 2 now.
January 16th. Yeah.
January 16th. How has that been? How has the launch been?
It's been amazing. Fiction was a whole new field for me, a whole new ball game. And, I set the bar very low because I was so terrified. I just was like, nothing terrible happened. That was my bar. Nothing terrible happened. So nothing terrible happened, thankfully, and a couple nice things happened. It was a Good Morning America Buzz pick. It was the CBS book club pick. It was an Amazon editor's pick. It was a People Magazine Book of the Week. So I was lucky to have some nice things happen. And it was nice enough that I want to write another novel. So I consider that a win. I want to keep going.
It is a win. And I love that you say you're lucky enough. But, honestly, luck has a lot to do with it. There is absolutely no question about it. But you have to have a wonderful novel. To be lucky, you have to be prepared for the luck, and you have to be open for the luck. I mean, this is Donna Tartt meets David Lynch, which tells you instantly what this book is. When you saw that description, Donna Tartt meets David Lynch, and when you realized you were getting these absolutely top-notch accolades, what did you think about that?
I mean, it was surreal. I'm somebody who loved fiction as a kid. I started writing fiction, when I was a kid and made up my own little books. They were all fiction. I was writing novels and sending weird stories to Ellery Queen and Alfred Hitchcock when I was a teenager. And then I fell into journalism accidentally and became, in my mind, I just became somebody who dealt strictly in fact. And it was just sort of a leap of faith to say, well, you know what, let me resurrect my old passion and see if I can actually do something with it. And it was really terrifying. And without the encouragement and help of many, many fantastic novelists that helped me with the manuscript, and of course, fantastic novelists like yourself who were so generous to me during and my publication, it was just absolutely a dream come true. Really, it was a dream come true. And I think you're right. This business is a lot about luck. I know plenty of talented writers who haven't been as lucky, but it's also about community and, really just being there for each other. And because we all know how it is to be in this business, it's a rough business, and connecting with readers and connecting with other writers is absolutely one of the biggest joys and one of the things that makes me want to keep doing it.
Yeah. Connecting with readers. When I look over here, I'm looking at all of your comments. Sherry Steuben says, will you write more fiction? Sharon Carlson Person says, congratulations.
Thank you.
Mighty Clay says, everyone is picking up where you end. Sharon Bishop says, I am thinking of reading it again. I loved it.
Hi, Sharon. Sharon and I have talked.
Let's talk a little bit, though, about how I was intrigued by what you were saying about being a reporter and then writing fiction. And I wonder how one serves the other. And then I promise we'll get to talk about where you end. But it is interesting, as a reporter, too, who turned to fiction, I wondered if I could make stuff up. Did you ever think about that? And how did your reporter journalism life sort of serve your fiction life?
Yeah. I've always had a really crazy imagination. And sometimes it was frustrating to write nonfiction and know that I had to stick to the facts. I couldn't make up dialogue. I couldn't make up events. I had to keep chronology as it actually occurred in history. And it was frustrating. So within the confines of nonfiction, what narrative nonfiction does is it takes elements of fiction, but stays within the confines of nonfiction. So you could use cliffhangers, you can use foreshadowing, you could do those kinds of things, but that's as far as you can go in nonfiction. So to be able to just tear all of those rules down, make things up, make up dialogue, make up characters, in nonfiction, the dead people don't always do what you want them to do, but in fiction, the people do exactly what you want them to do. So it was just sort of an entirely new, exciting world. And yes, to answer somebody's question, I'm under a 2-book contract, so I do have another novel coming, and I'm just trying to figure that out now.
I know that's a moment in time, but let's talk about the one that worked, the one that turned out to be fabulous and lauded and applauded. Mighty Blaze is saying, in nonfiction, the dead people don't always do what you want them to do. That's your quote of the day. Let's talk about where you end a little bit. Can you set up the story for us?
Yeah. One of the things that, I had come to believe over years of doing nonfiction that the truth is always stranger than fiction. It just always is. And, this novel, Where You End, was actually born of a true story. In 2019, I happened to watch a really fascinating documentary called Tell Me Who I Am. And it told the true story of these two identical twins, Marcus and Alex Lewis. And one of them had suffered a very traumatic brain injury. And when he woke up from his coma, the only thing he remembered was his brother's face and name. He didn't remember their history, any of their memories. He didn't remember any of their friends or family. He only remembered his brother's face and name. So in this tragedy, the twin who was not injured saw an opportunity and decided he was going to recreate their entire history, giving them memories that they really bore little resemblance to the lives they actually lived. So that was the springboard for the novel. And I also drew from my own life, as I've talked to you about before. My own life seeped into this work in a way it never does in nonfiction.
Well, let's get to that in a minute, because it's so fascinating how the universe presented you with these tools and realities to create this story. You're really the only person who could have written Where You End. Tell us about the book then. You said it came from this documentary, which is fascinating. We'll talk more about that as well. But how did you take that story and make it into a book? What is the book's story?
The book's story is well, it is. I actually changed the identical twins to girls. They're female protagonists in my book. But it's the same scenario. One of them suffers a traumatic brain injury and loses her memory, except for her twin's face and name. And the twin does decide to recreate a history. I think that the history I recreate is much more dangerous and scary than the one that the actual twins lived through. Actually, I shouldn't say that. Theirs was pretty dark too, but mine, I guess, is a little bit more twisted, and there's more to the backstory than what we know about the real twin story. But I did draw from my mother, who is an identical twin, and she and her identical twin weren't just identical twins. They were mirror twins, which is a concept I talk a lot about in the book, which is this rare phenomenon where identical twins the embryo splits later than usual. So one twin will have it right-handed, one twin will be left-handed. The twin will part the hair on this side and that side. And hold on, my edits are here, and I have to get the really quick.
No problem, no rush. Do you love this, you all? It's so interesting because we are here now at a moment of history when Abbott is getting the edits for her new book. And don't forget to remind me to ask her what the new book will be, because we are here at the moments when we are seeing her edits. And now we're preventing her from looking at them, which I know is always...
They're always here. Hold on, I will.
Okay, hold on a second. And I think she has pictures as well. Mindy says, this book made me think about twins a lot more and how their minds work and about their relationships. Yes, it's an incredibly thought-provoking book, because if you are a twin or know a twin, that's interesting. If you have never really thought about twins except superficially, this will really pique your interest in how their minds work and how their relationships work and how they live with someone who looks exactly like they do. And as Robin says, mirror twins, completely interesting. So Welcome back, Abbott. Are your edits on? Sharon says, witnessing something exciting. Absolutely. Your edits are on paper?
Yes, I requested them on paper and on electronically. On paper, I'm sure any other writers, maybe Hank, you'll agree with me. You catch things on paper that you don't catch on the screen. So we're nearing the final edits for the book, which is we could talk about later on, but it's I insisted on seeing it on paper. So that's what I'll be doing tomorrow, looking at my edits on paper. But
let me ask you something. I want to get back to mirror twins, but let me ask you something about that. How do you, I love editing. When my edits arrive, I absolutely cannot wait. I think here's the moment that this book is going to change and grow and be better. I know some people think, oh no, now I'm going to have to do a lot of work.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Oh, I love edits. Edits are my favorite part of it. I should say that the edits here, these are like final edits. This is right before it goes to copy editing. So I've already, the manuscript came in at like 95 and I cut 9,000 words from it. And then I cut it so I really did a nice trimming. The story moves quickly. I want it to be something you read in one sitting. Sorry, I don't know what's going on with my door, but I want it to be something that
we'll check out. But I don't want you to worry. We'll be fine.
Okay.
Go.
I'm sorry.
I love this is crime time. No, if we were on tape, you all would never see this happening. But this is actually an insight into a writer's life when you're focused on something and trying to do something, and then somehow the rest of the world wants you to do something else.
I just sort of let Dexter stand in for me for a minute, and you could have asked him some questions. But yeah, so I want this. It's kind of a creepy island book. It's a utopia gone awry. It's kind of very Lord of the Flies, and I want people to be able to read it in one sitting. It's like one of those, like a nonfiction thriller, really.
We'll talk about it now. What is the name? We'll talk about it now. What is the title of it?
It's called Eden Undone. And the subtitle really tells you everything. It's a true story of sex, murder, and utopia at the dawn of World War II. So, yeah.
That sounds amazing. Eden Undone. And we will all look for that. And you'll come back to Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze to talk about it. I talk about that as well, even though it's nonfiction. That sounds fantastic. Eden Undone, everyone. Make sure you mark your calendars for that. So back to the mirror twins of where. Yes. Talk to us a little bit about mirror twins and why that's so intriguing.
So as I was saying before, my edits so rudely interrupted us. Mirror twins are this rare phenomenon where the embryo splits later than usual. And when the twins look at each other, it's akin to looking in a mirror. You know, the right hand, one is right hand, one is left-handed, as I had said, and different parts and different sides. Sometimes there'll be dimples on one side and then the other side. My mom here is a mirror twin. I don't know if you could see. But here's my mom and her identical twin sister when they were kids. And they were really eerie. My mom is right-handed. My aunt was left-handed, and the whole hair thing. And basically, after watching that documentary and thinking about my mom and her sister, who, by the way, are named Catherine and Judith, just like the twins in the book, I just started thinking, what would my mom have done in that situation? What would my aunt have done in that situation? Would they have lied to the other twin? And what kind of lies would they have told? And would they consider the lying a betrayal, or would they consider the lying a gift?
Yes. I mean, let's talk about that and sort of set the stage for the readers who haven't read this wonderful book, Where You End. As you said, one of the twins has a traumatic brain injury and can't remember anything about their lives. The other twin fills in their memories for them. And those memories may or may not be true. So you, as the author, had to decide what the motivation was for the twin who was making up the other's history. Yeah. What went through your mind about that? That is such a powerful tool.
Yeah. You know, it was basically, you know, deciding what kind of relationship they had. You know, during the course of writing this book, I had some writer friends saying, "Oh, wouldn't it be interesting if, you know, the twin is actually a bad twin, and she's not telling these lies to sort of give her twin back her sense of self and her identity, but she had this whole nefarious purpose that will be revealed down the end." And I thought about that, and, you know, and I was like, there has to be some nefarious intentions, but I don't want the nefarious intentions to be coming from the twin necessarily. And because I just think when you are that close to somebody, and when you are literally a mirror image of someone, it's much more interesting to sort of tap into, like, if there is a betrayal, there's a good reason for a betrayal.
I was going to say, if somebody's doing something that's carapacing over the past, maybe they think they're being helpful about it. And on the other hand, you know, a mirror twin is the opposite. So if someone's good, someone's evil. It's almost a trope, the evil twin.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wanted to play around with the tropes a little bit. I wanted to play around with a couple tropes. One of them being the twin, a good twin and bad twin. The twins have different personalities, but I don't think you could say that one is bad and one is good. They have, I think they display their darker urges in different ways, but they're at the core, they're very similar people. And I also wanted to, like, play around with the trope of nature versus nurture. You know, and the whole idea of twins too is, you know, why are we fascinated with twins? If you go back and read about Gothic literature from the 19th century, like Poe wrote about twins, Freud wrote about twins, and it's the idea of the uncanny and that you have a shadow self. And the idea about the doppelganger, and the reason this was always such a Gothic trope was because it's unsettling. You know, it's kind of unsettling to think that you have a mirror image of yourself running around and you're not quite sure what they're doing all the time. and they were always twins were always a harbinger of doom. And I wanted to play around with that because here are mirror twins where one of them doesn't know who she is anymore. Like, so it's not only that she, has no sense of, whether or not she's good or bad. She really has no sense of herself at all. And sort of how do you play with this shadow self when the shadow self is entirely gone? And I liked the idea of having a narrator who was unreliable, not because of the usual reason. She's not drunk. She's not just a liar. She's an unreliable narrator because she really doesn't know anything.
I mean, it's interesting because one of the things that authors do is their characters take action because of something that happened in the past. Right. The backstory sort of dictates the future. But exactly. if your character doesn't know her backstory, the decision-making process is going to be completely altered. Can you talk about that as an author? Whether the good news and the bad news about that as an author?
Yeah, that's a very, very interesting way to put it, because as you said, she had no motivation from her backstory. Her history wasn't dictating anything all. And the only thing she had to go on was what her identical twin was telling her. So can you imagine if you put yourself in Kat's shoes? Kat's the one with the brain injury, and she has no reason to disbelieve her twin. She has every reason to think that her sister Jude is going to tell her what her personality was, tell her what her identity was, what she liked, what she disliked, what she had done in the past. Had she been in love? Even just something simple of what was her favorite food. All these things are up the mundane to the, to the consequential. And sort of, once she starts pulling at the threads of Jude's elaborate tapestry, that's where the sort of intrigue starts coming in. And is Jude lying? Jude seems to have an excuse for every time is Kat suspicious. And are Jude's excuses correct? Is she telling the truth? Is Kat being overly paranoid and sort of suspicious? And was it in Kat's nature to always be suspicious? So there were like layers of questions. It wasn't just, is this truth or fact? It was, am I the kind of person who would question what my twin is saying? And that sort of thing. So she's really starting from a very raw place.
She doesn't even have her moral or ethical balance in any way. So that makes their relationship now be completely based on trust.
Yeah. Yeah. And where do you go when that trust starts to crack? How terrifying that is.
And you don't even know whether it's starting to crack or whether it was already broken at the moment you realized it. The other thing that I think is so interesting from a writerly point of view is when you're writing about a character who doesn't remember a chunk of things, you as an author needed to decide what she does and what she doesn't remember. Does she, I'm making this up, but does she remember how to play Monopoly? Or does she remember if she can roller skate? Or does she know how to roller skate? Or anything like that? Has she seen, Bride of Frankenstein? All those kinds of things. I don't know where that came from. How did you
It's a good example, though. I love it.
How did you decide what she would know and what she wouldn't know?
That's a very interesting question too, because I think that the body, and there's studies about this and books written about this, wonderful books written about this, about what the body holds, and sort of how the body does retain information and secrets that the mind might choose to discard or suppress.
Sure.
And there are scenes in the book where we see Kat react very physically, and she doesn't quite understand her physical reaction, but she eventually realizes, oh, my body's trying to tell me something. And what is my body trying to tell me? And
sort of a memory sort of a memory that isn't a conscious memory, but just sort of almost either a habit or a reaction or an instinctive thing that she got from somewhere that she now doesn't know the origin of.
Exactly. Yeah. And that happens a couple times, and she's just freaked out by it, because you can imagine if you have an extreme reaction to something, what happened in my past to cause me to have such an extreme reaction? What is buried in my mind that I can't call up anymore? And what is my body trying to tell me?
This sounds like a great book. And it does indeed. What is buried in my mind that I don't know?
Yeah.
is so terrifying. Again, we're talking about Where You End, the brilliant new book by Abbott Kahler. Emily says this book definitely sounds very intriguing, would love to read it, which reminds me, Emily, that Abbott is giving away a copy of this novel. So one lucky winner who wins on the Wheel of Fun at the end of the show will win Where You End with a signed book plate. So make sure you put in a question or a comment or just general accolades for Abbott in the comments, so you make sure that you are entered to win. The structure of this book is so immersive with its 2 points of view of the two twins, which means that you had to be each twin to
Yeah.
write this novel. Can you put us in the head of Kat and Jude and what it was like for you to be essentially
Yeah.
be them?
I would get on rolls and I would sort of, I didn't go back and forth all the time. I would get on rolls and I'd be like, oh, I feel like Kat this week. And I would write a week of Kat. And then I might write a week of Jude. And I'm not gonna lie, Jude came more easily for me at first because she was third person. And I'm so used to writing in the third person because of my nonfiction. And it just sort of, and Jude also had this sort of eagle eye um, observation skills that I found very conducive to with my research as a nonfiction writer, because the details are everything in nonfiction. And so I found her to be very easy. But I found her to be the more difficult personality too. So she was exhausting. You would think that the one who doesn't remember anything would be exhausting, but Jude was the one where I was like, wow, I really need a break from you, lady. Like you are intense.
Because she does know things, you
Yeah.
constantly had to juggle the reality of the fiction
Yes.
versus what she wanted to present the reality as.
Yes. So anytime you're reading what Jude is telling you, Jude is the truth. Jude is the arbiter of the truth, and she is the representation of what they actually went through. And sort of while Jude is sort of revealing the layers of what their background is and why she's lying to Kat, Kat's sort of stumbling around and is cheerful and optimistic and is like, wow, the world is new to me again. And this is all tempered by Jude being like, lady, reel it in. There's things out there that you want to be careful of.
How did it change, if it did, your idea of identity? That someone could tell you who you are? Does that make you be that person?
Yeah.
How do you think about that?
That's a really funny question you asked, because this book is dealing a lot with nature versus nurture. Is Kat driven by nature, who she is intrinsically, who she was born to be, or is she being shaped by the stories Jude is telling? And in the middle of writing this book, I discovered that my biological father was actually a sperm donor, who I have never met, really don't know much about. But I sat there, and after I got over the shock of this information, wondering, well, what did he give me? What did I get from this man who I've never met? And how different of a person would I be if he had raised me, if I had grown up with his influence in my life? Or did he give me everything I was going to get because just by virtue of sharing his genetics? And that was sort of something that was always in the back of my mind when I was writing this book. How much of Jude's stories is shaping Kat, and how much is she retaining of who she was before the accident? So it was always a fascinating battle in my mind.
Because maybe you got the gift of everything from this person, or maybe you've succeeded so brilliantly in spite of it.
Yeah, I mean, I know a little bit about him. I know he was a frustrated writer, so there's that. I know a little bit about him to know that. So I like to think that my mom took me out to libraries, and my biological father was somebody who liked to write. So maybe it all worked out.
And at least you got the writer part, and some days the frustrated writer part, but you seem to have persevered through that kind of beautifully. You alluded earlier to, Sharon says, I can't wait to see what the meaning behind the lies about her identity. Yeah, once you start reading this book, and I hope you do, it is absolutely twisty and turny and unpredictable and wonderful. And it's really thought-provoking, Abbott, because I don't think anybody who reads it will look at twins the same way again. Have you had people talk to you about that?
I've had people reach out to me who, in fact, the Amazon editor who picked the book as a Amazon Best Book of January was a mirror twin, and I ended up emailing with her for a little bit, and she's just like, it was especially fascinating to me. It made me reconsider my relationship with my sister and think about it a little bit. And I've had a couple people say the twins in my family, they're like this, but they're not like this, or they reminded me exactly of Kat and Jude. One is more gregarious and one is sort of reserved, and they all have these, here are the secrets that they would keep. And even the language in the book, that I use a language, a twin language that was actually inspired by the language that my mom and her sister spoke to each other when they were young. And I've had people come up and say, yeah, my friends or my sisters or my twins had their own language too. So I think anybody who has twins in their aura, in their orbit, is going to have this resonate a little bit. So.
And do you think that people who haven't will also feel different about twins?
Oh, I would like to think that maybe they'll eye them a little, be a little bit wary. Twins are, if they want to, twins can have a lot of fun with people. Identical twins, anyway.
I mean, that's sort of standard, that one pretends to be the other.
Yeah,
that's that's disconcerting.
Yeah, it can be disconcerting. And to couple it all, my father, the man who raised me, not my biological father, is also a twin. He's a fraternal twin, though. So it was kind of just also interesting to me growing up to contrast his relationship with his fraternal brother and my mom's very close relationship with her mirror twin, identical sister.
A different relationship where they fought more distant?
Oh, it just wasn't the same. It wasn't the same.
So fascinating.
Yeah.
Oh, I know I want to get to Q&A from the audience because we have so many questions from people, but we are talking about Where You End. I don't want to cover your name, by Abbott Kahler. This absolutely uniquely immersive, wonderful. As I said before, Donna Tartt meets David Lynch, which is just so absolutely perfect of a description. Let's get some questions from our wonderful audience. Sherry says, do you like writing fiction or nonfiction more? And that reminds me to ask about sizzle history. So tell a little bit about that and answer Sherry's question, if you will.
Sure. Sizzle History was my first book, Sin in the Second City, which was a true story of America's most famous and lavish brothel that operated in Chicago in the early 1900s, and the sort of nationwide push to shut it down. It sort of became a symbol of all that was wrong with the world at the time. And my review in the USA Today, they called me a pioneer of sizzle history, which I just loved. It was
that means that you're taking a story, a true story, and making it absolutely fascinating.
I like to think that's what it meant, and it was sort of sexy. And I guess what I really started to do, which I think a lot of people then started to do too, which is a great thing, is highlight women in history, women's stories who have been written out of history or forgotten or discarded, or the men took the point of view over. But I really had fun resurrecting these sort of subversive characters and from history, and so I like to think it's not only sizzle means it's fun history, but it's also sort of highlighting women that were sort of cast aside at the time, or demeaned at the time, or considered to be too scandalous for public consumption. And to answer Sherry, that's a really great question. I love different things. I know this is a cop out, but I love different things about each one. Nonfiction, there's nothing more fun than research. Research is like going on a detective hunt. When you get to an archive and you have 20 boxes waiting for you and you don't know what's in the next envelope or the next folder or the next, it is the most exhilarating thing that you could ever do. And nothing in fiction has that, really. I mean, you could research, but the research isn't paramount to what you're doing, to the extent as it is in nonfiction. But in fiction, it's like, wow, where can my brain go? And it's just, the freedom is exhilarating, but it's also terrifying. It's like in nonfiction, you can't write bad dialogue. Fiction, you can write some bad dialogue. In nonfiction, you can't make a wrong plot twist because it's all written out for you. In fiction, you can make a wrong turn. Exactly. But it's also like it's coming entirely from your head and from your soul and from whatever weird neuroses that you've built up over your, decades on this planet. And in nonfiction, it's just not as personal. So
That's so interesting. I always think that, in nonfiction, of course, you have documents and clues and interviews and reality and history in the past. And in fiction, it's sort of you're researching your own imagination.
Yeah,
You're
that's such a
researching
great
your
way to
own
put it.
psyche, and you're exploring in a different kind of way. And you certainly don't know what you're going to find. Even though we think we know, it's
Yeah.
always something new and always something different. Amazing, amazing. Who else has a question? The cover is a little creepy, Kim says. Yes, indeed, in a way that makes you want to find out what the book is about. What was the process for developing this cover?
Well, I do want to say up front that no rabbits were harmed in the creation of either the book or the cover. No animals, no animal cruelty, or anything like that. Rabbits, though, are a figurative thing in the book. And when we were talking about the cover, we thought rabbits would be a resting visual. So I actually found this picture by an amateur photographer in Florida of this girl, this model, who I imagined to look very much like Cat and Jude. Like if I pictured Cat in my Jude and had this model, and she was wearing this creepy rabbit mask. And I thought, oh my God, like this is perfect. So she was the drawing point. And for a while, we actually considered just doubling that image and making it the two twins with these masks on. And the photographer was like, it's a great image, but it's a little bit too creepy. Let's just, make the mask themselves. And I really love the way that came out. And I think it's just creepy enough. It's just, it's creepy, but it doesn't go overboard in the creepiness. So at least for me, it's like the threshold. It's at the,
I mean, clearly something is wrong or weird, and it is a mirror image, and it is opposites,
yeah,
and where you end is where I begin. That sort of talk about the title a little bit, where that came from.
Yeah, that's actually where the title came from. It's there is a line where Kat says, I can't tell where I end and where she begins. And so we just thought there was a bunch of titles that we were considering, but that one seemed the most apt. And also because there's like some people might get ended literally in the book. There might be a little bit of murder. There might be a little murder.
Ends where you end, and that's just what Anissa was asking as well. Very, very wonderful question. I'm looking for a couple more questions. Creepy rabbit mask is a fabulous sentence. That's true. It is also said in the same decade as when your mother was that age, or is it present day?
No, the twins are a little bit younger than my mom. They're probably about 10 years older than me. So yeah, it was just the twins in England who this happened to. It's basically set in the time period of them. The one who got injured, Alex, suffered his accident. I think it was in 1983 or 1981, around there. And so I set it around that time.
And what happened to those twins? What happened to the real twins?
They, I mean, if anybody wants a documentary, it's fascinating. There was this long extended period where he suspected his brother was lying, but didn't really confront him, and just went up. I guess in their British way, they were very stiff upper lip about it and really didn't have any confrontation until this documentary. And today it seems like they're happy and thriving, which is really wonderful to see.
Yes, absolutely. Amazing to see. Emily is asking, do you believe twins can do telepathy things?
I do think that they're, I don't know how much to say called telepathy or just a heightened, when you are that close to somebody, when you actually live in the womb with them and share the same, all of the same nutrients, and you sort of grow up not knowing what life is without the other. I think there is a little bit of a telepathy that develops. I certainly saw it with my mom and her twin at the very least. They would read each other's minds. And I don't know if anybody ever remembers that Saturday Night Live skit from a long time ago, but it was a game show thing where they were doing telepathy and somebody would, like hold up a sign and the other person came up with the answer, and it had nothing to do with what was on the sign, but it was the correct answer. So it was kind of like that, where things will come out of left field, but somehow be the correct thing.
Yeah. Someone was asking, and I hope this is okay to ask you, has your mom read the book, or did she,
Yes.
What did she think of it?
My mom read the book and she really loved it. And I think I was worried about it for a while because my mom's twin passed away a while ago, and as you can imagine, that was never and still is not easy for my mom. And I think she was more sort of honored that I tried to honor her and her sister with the names and that kind of thing. And she took it more in the spirit I intended, which was, a sort of homage to them rather than, anything else.
It was out of love. And that was Pat Timpanaro. Thank you for reminding me who that was, who asked whether your mom had read it. That's always iffy when you take things from your real life and the people involved are still alive and they know. What the origin of that is. You are fascinating. We could talk about twins forever. Where You End by Abbott Kahler. But let me ask you, Sherry, who does he help you write? Meaning
my bird?
Yeah, maybe Dexter. Does Dexter help you write?
He's a good editor. Like, he will literally poop on my pages. So, no, but to answer, he's in my companion. He's in my office with me. I have a tiny little office in New York City, and he is pretty much on my shoulder, and he's a wonderful companion. And I'd be very lonely without him.
And finally, Kathy is asking, is there a new book you're working on besides the one that we just Eden Undone that you just received the edits for? Are you working on a new fiction?
God, I am, and I wish I could crowdsource it because I'm not sure. I have a couple ideas, and I wish I could run it by people, but they're sort of percolating up here, and they're not fully formed yet. One of them is actually a little bit more back in history. But it's a thriller. It's a thriller set in history. So,
come back and crowdsource whenever you want. We all of us are here today, and whenever you need us to point you in the right direction. But you don't need that. The perfect idea will come when it's time for the idea to come.
I'm glad you say that, because right now in this period, you're sort of the dark land of no ideas, and you don't know if it's going to come. So I should take it from you, as somebody who has been here many times, has written many wonderful books.
Well, we can reassure each other. We can reassure each other about that. But right now, you need no reassurance because you have absolutely the buzziest book of the year, Where You End.
Oh, you're so sweet.
Taylor, and I hope one of you is going to win this book, and the rest of you know what to do. Click, 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 or run, run, run.
And I want to say, if anybody has a book club, I zoom into book clubs. If I can do it, I'm happy to do it. It's so much fun. So I'm just putting that out there.
Well, that's wonderful. I agree with that. And will you bring Dexter?
Oh, always. Dexter is always an invited guest at the book club, and usually has something to say.
I'm sure he does. Well, let's see what Dexter will do when we spin the wheel of fun to see what lucky winner will go home with Where You End with a book plate, with a signed book plate. And the winner today is, let's see who that is Marissa Coots. I hope that's how you say it, Marissa. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so glad that you are here today. Marissa, you know what to do. You email me. You'll get the email on the screen. Email me. I will email our executive producer, who will email Abbott's publicist, and we will get you the book. That is the round robin of how you get your book. Your winning book, you have won Where You End by Abbott Kahler. The rest of you, as I said, you know what to do. Do not miss this twisty, turny, propulsive, original, and just creepy enough novel. I hope you all enjoy it. Before you go, Abbott, let me just say quickly to all of you, remember, we will be back next week with a special edition of Crime Time at 3:00, and then our regular special edition at 4:00. At 3:00, look who we have. Heather Gudenkauf, one of my very favorites. Don't you love her, Abbott?
I do love her. I didn't know she had a new one out. That's exciting.
Yes, yes, yes. Everyone is Watching by Heather Gudenkauf. It's out soon, and we will have her, I think, before even her pub date. So you will get a first look at Everyone is Watching. It's about a really survivor-like television show in a gorgeous mansion where the games are deadly and only one can win while everyone is watching. A game show on live TV. Can you imagine how scary that would be? And then after that, at 4:00, we will get Murder Road by Simone St. James. And I cannot wait to start reading this. On the front, Riley Sager says, from its nerve-shredding start to its thrilling end, it's a trip well worth taking. Murder Road by Simone St. James. So 3 p.m. Heather Gudenkauf, 4 p.m. Simone St. James with these marvelous new books. As Marissa says, splendid hour. I so agree with you.
Me too. Thank you all so much for coming. And I hope you love the book if you get a chance to read, and get in touch with me. I'd love to stay in touch.
And where do they find you, Abbott?
My website is abbottkahler.com, ABBOTTKAHLER.com. And that's my Gmail too, abbottkahler@gmail.com.
Sure. And I'm sure people will be finding you. Kim says, setting my alarm on my calendar for next week. Donna says, nice to meet you. Maybe next in person. Emily says, is it next week? Yes, indeed. Next week at 3 and 4. And we will see you right here. Because remember, you all, it's always safe inside a book. And we'll see you next time.